Welcome to the Healthcare Hot Seat with Tina D. Badham and Lorie D. Owens, where the people who keep healthcare moving and the people who depend on it finally get a seat at the table. Take your seat. The conversation starts now. Welcome back to the Healthcare Hot Seat, where we bring real conversations to the people shaping care, leaders, clinicians, caregivers, and families that are navigating a healthcare system that isn't always built with them in mind. I'm Tina Badham.
And I'm Lorie Owens. Today, we're digging into one of the biggest issues affecting home-based care and really healthcare everywhere. The staffing challenges that make communication harder than it should be. When people are overloaded, those gaps tend to show up in compliance, our consistencies and communication, confidence, and the care families experience overall.
And today we are joined by Daniel Haven, the CEO of CareBestie, a company building tools that help families, caregivers, and agencies stay aligned, organized, and informed. CareBestie sits right at the intersection of patient experience, safety, and real-world caregiving, and we are so excited to dive into that.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Daniel. So let's start with your journey. Tell us what led you into the space and what made you realize that families and caregivers really needed something different.
I think it's quite a unique story from many of the different companies I've spoken to, and clinicians and people working at agencies in different roles. It usually is very much a personal experience that led them into the industry. I don't have that background experience. I actually have a cybersecurity background experience. My last technology company was in cybersecurity. I won't bore you too much with it, but it was all around identity in the cloud. What does the identity in the cloud actually have access to? Anyway, it felt very complacent. I'll summarize it with that. And after having built out not only a cybersecurity company, but beforehand also another technology company, I really decided I wanted to do something more meaningful. And senior care, because of my own experience, everyone has grandparents. I've seen them being in a senior living community, how that experience was like. So I always told myself I really wanted to leverage my experience and do something meaningful. And the senior aging space really gave me that opportunity. So decided after spending quite a few months speaking with hundreds of different operators to start CareBestie, really with the aim of doing something meaningful. And I must say, it's definitely not to be taken for granted to be working in such a meaningful industry, in an industry where the feedback really comes back almost in real time. Just, as an example, whether it's in cybersecurity or in other industries I've worked before, you work very hard on a software product, and that software product may never be used, or at least not in real time. And the fact that, again, with CareBestie, we can implement a tool and that same day actually listen to how people, patients and clinicians use the product is mind-blowing, not only for myself, but for the team. It really keeps people motivated.
Daniel, having that meaningful work, I think we all want to strive for that. And I love that that's where your mindset was when you came over to this journey. And, thinking about your grandparents and their situations as well. But when we think about that and all the conversations that you had, all the investigation you had prior to, what were the moments that made you realize that those gaps weren't just like inconvenient, but they were really affecting the patient's safety, the communication, and outcomes in general in home care?
It was really one moment. We spoke with an executive at Christian Church Homes, one of the largest senior living communities. They operate multiple states. And incredibly nice guy, Michael Hughes, I believe. He has since left, but if he listens to this podcast, again, thank you. Even more so, Michael knows that the main agent, virtual agent that we've created and really spent months with an entire engineering team building out. This agent has a neural network, short-term memory, long-term memory, so it was quite a dedication. That agent is named Michael. So again, we really had credible luck having a conversation with Michael Hughes, and the story was such that Christian Church Homes was doing a pilot program with a MSO, similar to a health plan, and basically they were telling us that the health plan was paying a senior living community money in order for the caregivers to be more proactive. And in essence, that means a caregiver every morning picks up a phone and asks the members, "How are you?" And through that simple conversation, they were able to surface potential problems and, more importantly, address them and resolve them very, very quickly. And over the course of 1 year, that was increasing quality of life and lowering hospitalization rates. And what was fascinating is that the organization was extremely satisfied with the results, but they weren't able to scale it across the multiple states. Even more so, they were mentioning the problems and the challenges they would have to do that. They would have to educate and train the caregivers. It just became very, very costly to actually operate such a process at scale. And that was really the wow moment, because on the one hand, not at scale, but in a specific senior community, living community in a specific state, they had incredible results that an MSO was willing to pay for. But on the other hand, they weren't able to scale it. So again, with technology, we knew we can hold an intelligent conversation and, in theory, ask millions of people every morning or every afternoon, "How are you?" And beyond holding a fun conversation with the senior, also surface potential challenges or problems the person might have, and making sure to distribute the problems to the different stakeholders. So specifically in home care, it would be the clinician, it would be people at the agency, potentially it would be a scheduler. That's something we've learned now with the over 30,000 calls we've had. A lot of them are about scheduling. So you really start to understand what the problems are and proactively engage with them. And again, we have seen it proven in market on a small scale, and we are very, very driven to now bring it across the United States.
I think that's so amazing. And honestly, I just to kind of tie up what you said there too, I think it's important to note the importance of how impactful just a question like that is. How are you doing? It's amazing how that can really open up and change so many things, especially in healthcare. I always find that very fascinating. I'm sure there's a lot of studies out there that I probably have not even got to read yet that involve that. So really, I love that. And I think you kind of touched on this too, Daniel, but in home health, especially like the care plan, it lives in one place. And of course, the caregiver's memory is in a totally different place, right? And I think the family sometimes feels like they're left trying to fill in those gaps, right? So from your perspective, what do you think the biggest communication challenges are that are happening inside of the home?
So it's interesting. I've thought a lot about it, but it's on the one hand incredible what home care agencies have managed to do to deliver an incredible amount of care, such high quality care. But because it's such a distributed model, there has been a lot of energy and essentially staffing going towards care coordination. So beyond delivering care, it's finding out a path to have clinicians go to each and every single home to make sure there's an entire back office team, whether it's scheduling, intake, it goes on and on and on. And the care coordination piece has just become such a massive operation of the entire home care model. And just again, from asking the single most important question, how are you? We've been able to surface an incredible amount of challenges that the families have, that the seniors have. And like I mentioned, and I guess just a teaser, 35% of it comes down to scheduling, the number one topic that keeps on coming up. It's the number one dissatisfaction also when it comes to home care, and specifically in home health. As you're familiar, you've got HH caps, so it's very impactful to make sure everyone is satisfied. So it's something that you would almost assume is trivial, but it's not, because of the decentralized model, because of clinicians really coming into also this work in order to be able to own their schedule, because they are working so hard. So it's difficult with so many different stakeholders, and therefore it's something that we think we can actually help and help the different stakeholders speak better to one another and really streamline that communication piece.
Daniel, that is so meaningful, again, as to speaking to what the gaps are within home care and thinking about that, whether it's clinician satisfaction, the patient satisfaction, or HCAP scores, all of that communication. How does CareBestie step into that gap, and what actually does it do to help keep families, caregivers, and clinicians aligned?
So, first of all, I want to make sure I stay humble, because I'm new to the industry and I should be learning and listening. So by all means, number one, it's not a magic stick. There's no one single silver bullet. It's multiple things that need to happen. I would say, as we're partnering with agencies, we've learned where CareBestie can step in, and Michael, the AI agent, steps in. And if you think of the care journey, what we have thus far done, and I'll start really at the start, it's welcome calls. One of the things we've seen at agencies is that a referral comes into the EMR. The referral needs to be approved, dependent on the insurance plan, etc. And then once the referral is approved, someone in the intake team, or sometimes it's a sales team or marketing team, needs to get a hold of the patient. And that is difficult. That is difficult on multiple fronts. That is difficult because patients don't always answer. That is difficult because suddenly there are many referrals coming in and you've got a backlog. And right at the start, you already have a potential workflow problem. And because, again, CareBestie, at the end of the day, it's a patient engagement tool, it's our bread and butter to increase connectivity and speak with people. So that's one of the points we already come in. We've seen an incredible amount of results there, where in one example, we had a branch of an agency double the amount of referrals being admitted because of just the fact of being able to connect with people, with patients. Just to give an example, we've been able to connect within the hour to over 50% of the patients and really cover all of the patients within 24 hours to 30 hours. So connectivity is fairly high. And again, at the end of the day, it's because we leverage technology. We have the capabilities to send a text message before we make a phone call, leave a voice mail message, have the person potentially reach out to us and then take that conversation. So we've got multiple angles to do that. And we've learned that it's so incredibly important to make sure that beyond velocity, just increase patient touch points and make sure the patient feels heard and make sure the patient is fully aware of the entire process, because they might be new to home health, right? They come from a very stressful event, which is in the hospital sometimes, or the person was in the community, but they're going into a process that they're unfamiliar with. And the most important thing here again is communication. So I think once the clinician is in the home, whether it's the start of care or for visits, there is such a relief for the family and the patients, because there's someone in front of them to provide the service. But what happens in between the visits, or even before the start of care, it's an unknown. And I would almost say in today's world, it makes people even more anxious, because I believe I frequently, perhaps too frequently, give the example of a pizza. Even if we order a pizza, we're able to real-time track whether the pizza is already in the oven, whether the delivery person took the pizza, is on the way to your home. Every step of the way you're being informed. And I think that's basically becoming a commodity. But when it comes to home health or home care, such an important, and also in hospice, really, in post-acute, so important to know what is going on. And that's, I think, where the process just becomes too bottlenecked, really.
To say too, I think agencies are under that constant pressure, right, to stay compliant as well. So there's that aspect of it also. And I think you really did a good job kind of answering my next question as well, but I am going to ask it still. And if there's anything you'd like to elaborate on, where, I know communication obviously is a big part of this, but where do you see the biggest disconnect between the care plan that these patients have and then, of course, the day-to-day reality that the caregivers in the home are actually facing?
And indeed, I think that is aligned with the last question you asked, because I only got to speak about the welcome calls, but CareBestie really comes in multiple stages of the care journey. So I'll just very quickly, high level, run through what we currently have developed with our partners. So it's welcome calls. We do in between the visits courtesy check-in calls, where we ask the patient how they're feeling physically and mentally, and relay that information back to the clinician so that the clinician is aware. We do all the inbound care center calls. So whether it's after hours or also now during business hours, it's that same familiar voice that welcomed you into home health services. That same familiar voice will also be able to pick up a phone and most likely answer a question when it comes to scheduling, because again, that is 25% of all of the inbound calls we've measured at a care center. And as you can imagine, also there are peak hours, so we really want to help agencies there as well. And then after a care center, we do visiting coordination and scheduling, so making sure that the day before, as opposed to the clinician having to go down a list, talking about the different points where we interact with the patients. So we also do scheduling and visit coordination, streamlining information between the patient, the caregiver, the clinician, and the agency. One of the things we've learned is that clinicians, after a very long day of visits, end up in the afternoon or sometimes even evening, call patients to confirm visits. And again, that's something that I think we can help the clinicians with, making sure that the person is aware that there's a visit the following day, and proactively engage the clinician throughout the day and ask the clinician when they expect to arrive at the patient's address, and relay in real time, synchronously, that information to the patient. We do patient satisfaction calls. So we learn when the last visit was, who the clinician was, and what the visit was about. And then we call the patient and we ask, if it was a PT visit, do you remember the exercises that were given? Were you satisfied? Did you feel heard? Would you recommend the clinician? Would you recommend the agency? So we're really trying to make sure that the person feels heard throughout the process. Again, it's an incredible program, the patient satisfaction program, because we just learn about what is important to patients and we can relay that back to the agency. And a quote that stays with us because it's so important. We've learned from an executive at a branch that what was incredible for them is that they would potentially have a complaint. They would speak with the agent and share that complaint. And then you would have the branch manager see that and already phone the patient with a solution. So as opposed to the branch manager being overwhelmed with a patient that is raising a problem that the branch manager is hearing about for the first time. Here you have almost Michael take the heat, apologize, be very apologetic and appeasing, making sure that there will be a follow up. And you would have then the agency, the branch manager, essentially come speak with the patient with the solution. So again, just one example of how impactful that has been. And then the last touch point is actually post home health services. So we do calls all the way up to 120 days when the patients are discharged from home health services. Number one, throughout the first month to make sure that they won't go back into the hospital because of decline in physical or mental health. But then we keep on actually having touch points and we ask them, how are they, whether there are worsening symptoms, just to make sure that there is still that relationship between agency and patient, because it's such a shame to lose that relationship. I think there's such a lost opportunity when at the end of the day, agencies treat patients for a fairly short time window. Again, specifically in skilled, it would be an episode or two, let's say on average a month and a half. But then that relationship is lost. And again, I think it's such a shame, especially if the agency did a formidable job and the patient really enjoyed the care. Why not keep that relationship? So that's something that we do in that last post discharge to community program. So we have all of these different touch points, and we've just learned a lot about what the patients are thinking and how we can improve care coordination to really establish a win-win-win. A win for the patient. A satisfied patient means we're setting up the clinician for success because the patient is happy. And the patient won't be annoyed when the clinician comes in. We're setting up the clinician for success by also relaying more information about the patient, what's going on in the home during the days that there was no visit. And then I think it's full circle by really setting up the agency for success and making sure that the agency has a chance to do service recovery as opposed to hearing it or reading about it in the survey. So we're really trying to make sure that everyone is happy.
Absolutely. I think CareBestie seems to really focus in on improving clarity, establishing consistency, whether it's in communication or processes. When can you expect a call? When can you expect your clinician to show? Um, Even as you said, at the follow-up, at the very end of service, you know, how did you enjoy your service? Let's stay in touch. If you ever need us again, the agency is here for you, etc. And that really goes back to being able to keep that patient on service long term, be that preferred provider for that patient and their family, but that also establishes you in the community as well as being that go-to agency. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
And yeah, you covered so much there, Danielle. I was thinking back to when you and I met a couple of months ago and had our first conversation, and the demo that you gave me with Michael and the on call. That was something, and I don't believe I heard you really mention too much about that, but the on-call after hours call and how Michael handled the situation and was able to even acknowledge, yes, I'm AI, and kind of make the patient a little more comfortable. Can you just share a little bit about that and how that came about as to how you made that improvement?
Absolutely. And I think, and thank you for addressing that, because I think at the end of the day, especially in an industry such as healthcare, where keeping that face to face relationship is so, so important. Again, and it's something I haven't addressed yet, but we have just learned by following clinicians and being in the field that there's nothing like having a clinician look into the eyes of the patient. And I've read a quote that I could very much relate to, even though I've never been a clinician, but just following clinicians. Um, it's not it's assessing the situation even before looking the person into the eye. It's looking into the room and the house, what is going on, and understanding what the situation is like. And I by all means, technology is not able to do that. It's clinicians that do that. It's something that is taught. It's something that you over time learn through experience, and therefore there's just nothing like it. And again, I think, in terms of the perception that technology has in such an industry where humans are at the end of the day at the forefront, I just want to make sure that the clinicians and the care that they provide are amplified. So in a way, I'm hoping that we will find our journey to essentially become an assistant to the clinician. And by all means, making sure that the clinician feels empowered. And like I said, it is really a circle. If one of the stakeholders feels empowered, the other stakeholder will also be more satisfied, because there's such an intense relationship between the clinician and the patient. So to answer your question with regards to technology at the forefront, one of the things we've developed very early on is a sentiment analysis. So if there is, through the communication, whether there are trigger words or another type of analysis we can do by understanding that the person is getting frustrated or is frustrated with speaking with technology, Michael would be the first one to suggest whether it is helpful to actually do a warm transfer to a clinician that is on call, or to another staff member. So our thesis is making sure that 100% of the patients are being spoken to and cared for, whether through technology or not. So I really think here it's about augmentation and teamwork. It's making sure that we leverage technology where we can, especially in places where there are just not enough people, right? So if everyone is calling at the same time, or the agency is not big enough to actually call patients to ask how they're feeling or how satisfied they are, or even just not being able to get a hold of either the clinician or the patient, leverage technology, but then make sure that there's always a possibility to speak with humans, especially for people that have that preference. Now, with that being said, one of the other things we've learned, especially, and you spoke about the on-call demonstration I gave you, it's especially when patients feel heard, and even more so when patients call the agency, they wouldn't necessarily mind technology, we've learned through the data, because they're looking for answers. And whether the answer can be provided by technology or by a person, they would rather have an answer quickly as opposed to listening to classical music for the next 20 minutes. So I think that's something that we've just learned along the way. When the patient is in need for answer, provide that answer. When it is a call that could be perceived as the agency looking for information about that patient, and therefore it's almost like a one-way stream,
Mhm.
because it's the patient that needs to provide answers to specific questions. That's where it might clash. So that's something we've just learned. It's really making sure that you leverage technology also when it is the patient, or even the clinician for that matter, that is looking for help.
I think that is fantastic. And I think that's a great example of how when communication overall improves, that's where we start seeing those outcomes improving for those patients as well, when they can get the answers that they're seeking. So I think it's fantastic. I am curious with you kind of having been on the front lines a little bit, how have you seen CareBestie impact the overall patient experience? Have you heard a lot of positive feedback for that?
We have. So we're running we're running multiple patient satisfaction programs, but we're doing so with a fairly big publicly traded agency. And we have it's quite, again, a very anecdotal experience, but I think it does tell the story. We've had before technology calls, Michael calls, there's a consent that needs to be provided at the start of care. We've had a lady that shared with the clinician that she will give her consent, but she's against technology in healthcare. So fair enough. We did not know about that. We only knew that after Michael called. And then Michael called after a visit, and the patient was very eager to share about her experiences. And that was the first call. And then there was a second call after a second visit. And Michael referred to the experiences the patient had that first visit. And the patient was overwhelmed because how can technology remember that? Suddenly you have that one-on-one relationship. So over time, that relationship just became better and better and better, to the point where that same lady, she doesn't anymore wait for a call, but she makes the phone call to Michael to keep Michael updated with how she's feeling and what she's thinking about either the agency or the clinician that visited.
I
So
love
it's
that.
it's just been a remarkable journey, really.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That really leads into actually my next question, Daniel, which was, what's the moment where you saw CareBestie directly improve a patient's day? And that really sounds like a perfect example of how that impact happened.
It's really the single most important reason why I enjoy every day that I'm working at CareBestie. It is, I would say, by far much easier for me to hire people because of the industry we work in. Again, I don't come from healthcare. My last company was in cybersecurity. Before that, we were in the certification business, in education, something completely different. The fact that you can work on technology and get that feedback from patients is something incredible. The fact that we have proof in the pudding, and
Mhm.
that is something that is just, again, incredible.
It changes how you show up for work each
Yeah.
day, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And again, I always find it interesting because usually people tend to think that the grass is greener on the other side. I've been fortunate to make a few passes to the other side. I've
Yeah.
worked in different industries. There's plenty of things to say about the healthcare industry. For instance, and I do agree with that. I think it's a shame that it's somewhat behind when it comes to technology. It's moving slower than other industries. As you can imagine, as a technology vendor, that is frustrating because I just don't understand why we can't leverage technology to actually improve the industry. But then again, I would not have wanting to be working at any other industry. That there's such a level of gratification from doing this day in, day out. I feel incredibly fortunate to have very thoroughly decided to work in healthcare.
And I think we both
That's right.
share that. Yeah, I think there's a real privilege to being able to work in this industry. And we could probably go into tons of other conversations about technology and the speed of which it is coming into this industry, but I think you've kind of touched on a lot of that. There's a lot of hesitation from just knowledge deficit, right? Not understanding what technology actually can do. And we've actually had a whole episode on AI that we are planning to put out at some stage. So I think there's a lot happening there. But I think, in home-based care in general, there's a whole lot going on right now. We've got the staffing shortages, rising acuity in patients, shifting regulations. Things are just changing at a rapid pace. So I'm really curious, Daniel, what are you most excited about as CareBestie continues to grow in this industry?
I'm really excited about to eventually get back to the story why we started, and that is increasing the quality of life of the senior, really. So as I explained in the beginning, we got into this industry, or not necessarily into the industry, but we managed to zoom in and focus on CareBestie because of the fact that we've learned that if you hold frequent conversations on a daily basis, ask a person, how are you? You can increase quality of life because you understand what the challenges are that may sound very trivial, such as an example we've heard is in the summer, an old lady not being able to turn on the AC. That is impactful. It sounds, again, trivial, but if there is no one that can help that person that day, that lady would have been in the heat for at least several days until someone would have been able to help that specific person. If that person would have been helped, very quickly, that would have increased the quality of life. And increasing quality of life is a win for everyone. It's a win for the person. It's a win for the loved, for the family for the children of that person, and it's a win really for the healthcare industry and for the economy. There's absolutely no reason why we can't proactively engage with people. So I'm really hoping that CareBestie, as we are increasingly speaking with more and more patients, now specifically in home care, I'm hoping we can further grow and make sure that we can be that companion almost to seniors, and beyond asking them, how are you? Also making sure that, if that specific person has an upcoming physician's appointment, as we all know, the number one reason why especially the older population doesn't go to the physician is because of transportation problems. Why can't Michael offer transportation through connecting to a transportation service? The same would be for, just making sure that the person gets out of the house. Perhaps Michael can offer to speak with people in the area and connect the dots and making sure that they can hold a conversation. So I'm really hoping that Michael would be able to be that proactive companion that checks in, holds an intelligent conversation, remembers what the person likes to speak about, distribute that information with the family, making sure those stories are also archived. I think for the grandchildren, that's something that I would have been jealous of. I would have loved for my grandfather to have shared his life stories and have that somewhere documented. And again, from a healthcare perspective, making sure that the providers are aware of what is going on and to make sure that they are treated faster.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And especially that last sentiment, Daniel, about your grandfather's personal stories. What a treasure that would have truly been for you to have. And it would be fantastic for us all to be able to pass on our stories to our loved ones and have them to be able to reflect upon us and getting to know different parts of us. But in general, overall, you've done a great job of really explaining what your hopes are for the future of care at home. What would you like for our listeners to really understand about how that might impact families and caregivers and agencies, and how CareBestie does that?
I think it's important to note that care is a combination of people going into people's homes, specifically in home care, assessing the situation and helping patients. A second component of that is care coordination, making sure that the patient is informed, whether it's about visits or whether it's about medication adherence or physical exercise. There's so much information that is being relayed beyond the patient, making sure that the family is correctly informed, because there is so much information provided to the patient. It's so important that the family is aware of that same information. It's important that for compliance reasons, all of that information goes back to the agency and to the EMR. I think CMS is moving into a direction where a lot more needs to be documented because of fraud and waste. So overall, I would almost say there are two very important components to providing care in the home. The single most important is people providing care, and then you've got the thing that really connects everything, and that is the process and the care coordination.
Exactly. The things that people don't see.
Beautifully
Exactly.
said, Daniel. Well, Daniel, we want to thank you so much for sharing your insight and for the work that you're doing to help make care safer and clearer and more connected for our families and caregivers that are listening.
Yes, Daniel.
Yeah,
Oh,
and thank you for allowing me to share my story. I really, really appreciate it. I don't take that for granted. Thank you, Lorie, for this opportunity and for having reached out. I'm new. I'm really trying to just learn. I think it's important to stay humble and just listen to what is important. I feel very confident about technology. And then it's about matching the experiences in the field and making it applicable.
Oh, Daniel, I just have to say, I think you're doing a fantastic job of really listening and paying attention to what's going on in our industry and really the things that matter most. And that's something that we're focused on here at the Hot Seat, of just trying to call attention to the things that matter most. And whether that's, you as a patient going into the doctor's office, as caregivers trying to respect your loved ones, as clinicians going into the home trying to get someone to change behaviors because it's in their best interest, right? But you're doing a beautiful job of really listening. And I really just appreciate your insight and what you're doing actually in the industry and for all of us out here. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And to our listeners, whether you're a clinician, a caregiver, or a family member trying to navigate at-home conversations like this that remind us better communication leads to better care, and better care leads to better outcomes.
And until we see you next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay in the hot seat.